Welcome to Running in the 70s, where we interview, meet, and get to know athletes of all kind who were running in the 70s. I'm your host, Matthew Kleinowski. Today on the podcast, we are across the ocean into the first stop in Ireland with someone who is truly a legend. So I won't spend too much time introducing him. We'll get to some of the highlights. We only have so much time to talk, so we'll talk about all kind of stuff today with the chairman of the boards, master of the mile. Welcome today, Eamonn Coughlan. Hi, Eamonn.
Hey, Matt. Nice to be with you here today.
All right, Eamonn, your autobiography is chairman of the boards, master of the mile. I was a miler in high school in the early 70s and through a little bit of university, and interest in the mile has always been high. It's pretty high right now. Has there been something that you've witnessed where there was a low point in the mile or something that kept it? It's just on the highlights now with teenagers and the Australian kid running under age 15. So what's the history of the mile been for you looking over these decades?
The history of the mile for me, as I developed through my teenage years and went to Villanova University, it was always to try and break that iconic time over the 1 mile distance, 4 laps of the track. See, can you get through each of them in around 60 seconds or better, just to break that magical barrier. And obviously there's always been something special about the mile because I was only a mere 2-year-old kid, I think, when Roger Bannister broke the first ever sub-4 mile in 1954 in Oxford. And I remember as a kiddie going to the cinema in my local area called Drimnagh, the Star Cinema. And the Path News used to show various updates of what was going on maybe 2 weeks ago. Or they might show small little documentaries before the movie would actually commence. And I'll always remember as a young kiddie seeing the Sir Roger Bannister sub-4 minute mile many times on Path News. So I guess as I developed as a teenager, running the sub-4 minute mile was always going to be a target for me. And it's always going to be a target for any middle distance runner out there aspiring to be good, because that barrier kind of confirms that you're good. If we hear 350, whatever.
3 yeah.
Whatever. So as I progressed and achieved my first sub-4 minute mile and my sub-350 miles, and then when I finished up 40 years after Sir Roger Bannister ran it, the first ever sub-4 minute mile, to crown my career as the first ever master over 40 to run under sub-4 minutes for a mile. That was the evolution of it for me personally. However, I've seen in modern times, back as far as the late 80s, 90s, noughties, and into teens and so forth, where there was less interest in the mile. It was always the 1,500 meters. But I think that's turning around again because people are beginning to really appreciate how fast Inga Britson or Josh Kerr, or you name it, Cole Hacker can run for a mile. And all the great young kids that are coming through running 3:48 indoors. Guys are in college now. So that is really making the mile a spectacular, iconic event again today, like it was all those years ago.
Let's start with just some background to you. Your autobiography covers a lot of personal things and everything. Let's start with your life, just for some background. Kid growing up in Europe, soccer, first thoughts, right? You grew up wanting to be a soccer player?
I just grew up from an ordinary middle-class family living in a suburb of Dublin called Drimnagh. And those houses were built in the late 40s when they were moving people from outside inner city into a new suburbia sprawling all around downtown Dublin. And my father, Bill, was actually one of the contractors, electrical contractor for building those houses. So when we were kiddies growing up in Drimnagh, we played sports. We played soccer, we played rugby, we played Gaelic football, we played running, we played cricket, we played whatever you could imagine. So there was a tendency, even when I came on the scene as a good runner, there were other great sports people in soccer and rugby who came out of Drimnagh throughout those years that I grew up on. But we got our foundation in Drimnagh, and there was one small little green area. It was the shape of a triangle, and it was around, I'd say 400 meters, 440 yards around it. We used to play relay races around that, but we call that field the field of dreams, because we all aspired at some stage in our lives that we would go on to excel in whatever sport my mates and I decided to choose when we got into our teenage years.
Let's talk about your first race at age 12 that you won. How did you get into that race? Uniform, who did you represent? Somebody? What was that race?
As a kid growing up, my father had a great interest in track and field. And through his work in the electrical contracting business, he volunteered at put sound systems in Santry Stadium, which is now called the Morton Stadium, in the Ivy grounds, in multiple sports arenas and stadiums, from the national soccer teams to Gaelic football with the All-Ireland finals. And I used to tag along with him. So when it came to going to the Santry athletics, he was very close. He became an administrator as well. And when he used to put the sound systems up for the big track meets like Kip Keano, Frank Murphy, and all the greats, Ron Clark and Ronnie Delaney, I would tag along as a little child, maybe not to Ronnie Delaney's races because I was too young then, but seeing his interest in it, going and watching track meets gave me an interest that, hey, someday maybe I'd like to do that. But as a kid in Drimnagh, running around and playing relay races, all the older boys would always pick me. And I don't know why they picked me. I obviously must have been good. If I was getting chased by somebody, I'd always get away from them. When I was in, say, junior high school, my mate sitting next to me in school was in a local athletics club called Celtic Athletics Club. And the coach that was in there were taking the kids off the streets of Drimnagh. It was almost like he was doing social work. Not that we really needed it. However, he was taking them off to the athletics club to train them for Gaelic football and hurling. And the athletics was really just part and parcel of him building up the stamina of his potential best football players. So I decided I'd join the athletics club called Celtic on a Sunday morning, way back in 60 years ago, would you believe? The first day there was an under 13 race on, and the coaches said to me, no, you're too young. It's only your first day in the club. So I basically cried my way into the race. I said, I want to run, please. So they allowed me to go in with only one condition, that I'd followed the best guy around because it was in a forest area and they didn't want me to get lost. So the gun went off and I followed the guys and I was feeling really good. And the guy I was supposed to follow, I decided, hey, I think I'll just go past him. I feel good. So I past him and he shouts back at me, come back, you get lost. And I go, no, all I have to do is follow the red flags. So I followed the red flags around the forest, came up the home straight in the famous Phoenix Park here in Dublin, to the shock and the gobsmacked officials. This little skinny kid who was coming up the finish line winning the race. That started me off. And I did that because I wanted to show my dad, hey, that I could probably be a good runner if I joined a running club. From then on, I gave up my soccer. I gave up my Gaelic football because we were winning nothing. And I decided I better stick with athletics because I was winning almost everything.
Yeah. What about training? The training definitely changed for you in the next decade, but how much were you doing? What were they trying to do with a 12, 13, 14-year-old kid? What were you thinking?
They were just trying to teach us how to have fun. There was no such regime where you would do a certain amount of mileage, be it 5, 6, 7, 8 mile run at that age on a Tuesday. And then on a Thursday, you do quarters. And on a Sunday, you might do something else. And another day, you might do something else. And it was documented and all that. What my coach did at the time, his name is Jerry Farnan. He used to bring us to the Phoenix Park where I won my first race. And he used to have us play for our long distance fartlek workout, cats and mouse games. He'd send off the mice. About 10 minutes later, he'd send off the cats. And the mice would head way up into the Ferdy Glen. And the Ferdy Glen is the most beautiful scenic part of the Phoenix Park. As you can imagine, a lovely glen, lots of forests. So when the cats would eventually arrive up the forest, we'd start looking around and see could we catch the mice. And we'd run up and down the hills and dales for an hour or more, having fun. So he brought that fun element into it. When we were doing interval work, it wasn't timing us doing 200s or 300s or 400s. We were doing lamp posts. We would run maybe 3 lamp posts hard and we take 2 lamp posts easy. Or we might go 1 lamp post fast, 1 lamp post easy. Everything was really fun. And it wasn't bedded into your brain what a schedule was supposed to be out. His belief right through when I was 15, 16, 17, and doing really well at high school level, he said, I want to get you ready for when you're 22. 23, 24. I don't want to bury you out in the club or while you're going through secondary school. So that was the philosophy in which I trained as a young boy. But things did dramatically change when I went to Villanova in terms of the schedule.
That brings up the thing. As soon as somebody runs a great time under 16, under 17, there's a big discussion. Oh, I hope they don't ruin this kid. That's very interesting. Now, how did you connect initially with Farnan, the sprint training, no using your arms, some of this very kind of unconventional stuff, but how'd you connect with him? And was there anybody else at your potential level that you recall? Did he see anybody else, or were you the guy he said, oh, this is the guy?
The first race I ran was a club called Celtic Athletic Club, which I just referred to. Celtic broke up because the lead official in the club passed away. And at that stage, I was still playing soccer and Gaelic. So one evening, Jerry Farnan came from Metropolitan Harriers, or Metro AC, came knocking on my home door and asked the parents if he could have a chat with them about maybe potentially Eamonn coming down to Metro. He saw good potential in me. So I decided, yeah, why not? I go to Metro. There's somebody interested in me. So he told me back then he had witnessed me running in an inter-club race in County Wicklow in a skinny little streaky at 12 years of age in what we call a Dunstores white vest and white short.
I've seen that photo. Yeah, we've seen that photo.
The cheapest my mom and dad could buy. However, he saw some potential. He told me that my parents that day when I won that race in muck and dirt cross country. So when Jerry took me under his wing, he had 5 or 6 of us, all really good runners. We had probably the best team in Ireland right through our teenage years at club championship level. But slowly but surely, every one of them would drop by the wayside. And I was the only one of those guys who continued to the level I was fortunate enough to achieve in my career. But yeah, he had some really good guys. We worked together. We were a great team. We helped one another all the way through club level.
I want to talk about some of these details of training for people that haven't read your books. The sprint training, the working on the kick. You think I wasn't the fastest sprinter, but you did some interesting sprint training, the high knees. It wasn't linear training, but and the whistling. Can you talk just a little bit about that stuff?
It's like what my coach referred to as reflex speed. We worked on reflex speed. Okay, even in my elite career, I could only run about 50 seconds for 400 meters, right? However, I could run 50 seconds at the end of a 5,000 meter race. Why? Because I had that reflex speed. So what we did was, as I came into my late teens and then even through college, but particularly during the grounding work in my teens, we would do workouts, maybe go to the track and do some 300s or 200s or 400s. And while he'd be at the finish areas, he would invariably blow a whistle. I didn't know when he was going to blow the whistle, but he would blow a whistle maybe with 200 to go. But I had to change from that long, loping stride into a sprinter style, right? I had to become a Jesse Owens, as he used to say. And he taught me then the next one, he mightn't even blow the whistle. And then the third one, he might blow the whistle with 100 to go. And maybe on the 5th one, he might blow a whistle with 50 to go. And then maybe on the 6th one, he might blow a whistle with 300 to go. So you never knew. But it was all about changing, going from that lovely, long, fast rhythm of a middle distance runner now to become a sprinter. As a result, I just had that ability to be able, when I wanted to make a move, one move only, as Jumbo Elliott used to say, bang, I was gone. And that was the reflex speed that I trained on a lot.
I also want to check in about some of the people you mentioned already as models. Everybody knows Roger Bannister. I'm sure everyone in Ireland at that time knew the name Ron Delaney. Were those idols for you? How did you look at what you would accomplish? And when did you think my name's going to be mentioned with these guys one day?
I never thought of it.
No,
I never thought of it at all. But there was always that innate feeling inside. I wanted to be the best I possibly could be. And I was never, ever afraid to take shortcuts. I was always prepared to work really hard. And I was always at times smart enough to know when to take rest. But as a kid growing up, while I was only, 3 years old or so when Ronnie Delaney won the Olympic gold medal in Melbourne in 1956. I was just 4, just turned 4, as a matter of fact. Ronnie won it, I think, a week after my 4th birthday. But I didn't recall that ever until the hoopla, just like we're getting today about Rory McIlroy having won the Masters.
Yeah, big day.
Ireland going nuts. It was that nuts about the great Ronnie Delaney and the hero he became, which I got to hear about as a young 5 and 6 and 7-year-old. And then I would have met Ronnie when my father would be putting sound systems up in those various stadiums that I mentioned earlier, and would have got his autograph. And it was only then when I started to run. And I remember Ronnie Delaney tapping me on the shoulder one day, saying in Croke Park at an All-Ireland football final, saying, "I heard you're a great little runner. I'll be looking out for you one day." So little messages like that of inspiration from people like Ronnie Delaney, great Frank Murphy, who got me to Villanova University, the great Des McCormack, who passed away recently, a steeplechaser from Ireland and Villanova University. These were always encouraging me and telling me, "Hey, Eamonn, someday you can make it. You just got to do the work." So it was just true hearing all of this. But my real heroes, when I did take up athletics, were Ron Clark, Abiba Bakila, the great Kip Keano, Kipchoge Keano. I loved him. Peter Snell, loved Peter Snell. I would have their pictures up on my bedroom wall and just used to look at them and go, "Wow, one day I'd like to be like you guys." That was all when I was about 14, 15, 16 years of age.
Yeah, right in the heyday of the 64, 68 Olympics and all the world record breaking going on then. I want to talk about your getting to Villanova. You were a kind of a prototype of what they say Jumbo Elliott was looking for. Working class family, not yet a national champion, winning every race internationally, but the potential. Was there for you anywhere else? You got the connection between Ireland and Villanova had started. I think you've cemented it. Now everybody in Ireland probably thinks of Villanova. It's associated with your name. What was that process of you saying, "I'm going to leave this continent, I'm going to fly across the ocean and go to school somewhere far away"?
First and foremost, I wasn't recruited heavily whatsoever. The only tentacles that were put out, if I may say, when I was a senior in high school would have come from Portland, believe it or not. And they were only tentacles. There was no offer. I was actually only going to be the number 2 choice from Ireland for Villanova back in 1971. The first choice was Tom Gregan, and Tom was going after Jim Ryan's high school world record to try and run under 4 minutes for the mile and beat. And it was big hype. Tom could kick my ass in the mile. He could kick my ass over 800 meters. But when it came to 3,000 or maybe 5,000 or cross country, I'd beat Tom's ass. But Tom was always going to be the hero. So I never got an offer to Villanova. Tom was going. That was it. But because of the great Frank Murphy and Des McCormack, but they spoke to Jumbo Elliott about this kid, Coughlan. They thought could be much, much better. Give him a chance. You look at his winning record. Okay, he's run 4:09 for a mile. Gregan ended up running 4:01.6, I think it was, or 4:01.3 coming out of high school. So Tom was the stud. So as it turned out, Jumbo had a spot become available in maybe the middle of August, 1971. I only got maybe 2 weeks notice. I'm going to Villanova University. And it was like disbelief. And I never forget my folks leaving me to the airport and my little girlfriend, my new girlfriend from Ireland, who all these years later still happens to be my wife. I got on the plane in Shannon and flew to New York City. And at that time, Matt, it was like going to the moon. Just going to the moon. I never thought I was ever going to come back. It was scary, really scary. I'd only been to maybe San Sebastian in Spain for a cross-country race, over to England twice for track meets, but I'd never traveled. I had no experience whatsoever. I know I was raw, I was immature, I was lonely. And when I got there, it was, wow, cultural shock. I was blown away by the heat when I got off the plane. It was like 90 degrees and 90% humidity. I was picked up by Jay Williams, my great Villanova teammate, at the airport and brought to his house in New Jersey. And all the way down the next day with his parents, it was like a different world where I was scared and I was afraid. I almost didn't want to be there. So it was really a tough time for me when I eventually arrived in Villanova. And even a tougher time for the next 6 months I was there because of injury, because school was going bad, and because I was also homesick. It was pretty tough.
I've lived a lot overseas and moved to a lot of places in my career. And those 5 stages of adjustment hit everybody. You have to get through them. They take each of us different amounts of time. What about that injury? Had you been injured through school, and what happened there that also contributed to that struggling startup?
Immediately, I went from that little, not hit and miss, but that, say, fun running type training regime to Villanova University, where you had Marty LaCourty, you had Brian McElroy, John Harton, Donald Walsh, Jerry Baumax, just to nick any Shepard, great runners from different parts of America who are studs. I'm in the middle of these guys now going out for runs that just wrecked me. I ended up getting stress fractures, quad injuries, and I just wasn't able to train. And on top of that, where now you're going from doing probably 40 miles a week to 80, 90 miles a week, just a big shock on the body. Not only that, school wasn't going well. I was struggling with school and I was homesick. I decided during that injury period where I wasn't even making the team, not even making the freshman team, I was injured, that in the depth of night, I would leave and go home and run away. I ran away.
Did Ireland bring you home for a race during your first year?
Yeah, that was my ticket home. And this was the World Cross Country Championships. I was qualified for the junior team, but they didn't know that I was injured. And I have to put my hand up and say, I am very sorry for cheating, but I didn't cheat. I just decided I needed the ticket to get the hell out of here. Go home and see my girlfriend, go home to Ireland, go to my comfort spot and just chill out. So I came over, ran in the cross-country championships, didn't do well in it at all. And I announced to my folks, can't go back. I'm not going back. I'm too homesick. I just hate it. My father was absolutely shocked with my decision. And he said, please, Eamonn, you got to go back. I mightn't have much money, but I'll send you back. I'll bring you home this summer. I'll bring you home at Christmas, but you can't. And I got my own staying. Jumbo made the call. And Jumbo said, goddamn Irishman, get your ass back to Villanova. And if it wasn't for Jumbo Elliott calling me to go back to Villanova, I may never have gone back to Villanova. I said no to Jumbo. Would you believe that? And then my coach, Jerry Farnan, said to me, Eamonn, you got to go back to Villanova. You got the talent. You can make a left turn. You can make a right turn. If you make the left turn, you can stay at home. You can get a job and you can enjoy your life for a year or two. You'll be 20 years old and you'll regret it. If you make the right turn, you go back 2 or 3 months, you sacrifice, and after a year, you're going to love it. That's the choice. I said, no, no. But it was Eamonn at the time. I didn't get emotional, but I think about it. It was so funny. But I said, I'm not going out with you anymore. So Eamonn said, no, you got to go back, Eamonn. You got to go back. I don't want to be to blame. So I went back, and Jumbo was able to facilitate me and the president of Villanova University at the time and the teachers in there, because I didn't complete my studies for the first year. I was allowed a fresh start again, and they were able to put that down to illness. But I think
that's great. Oh, so everybody in your life, all the important people in your life were saying, go back.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
and Jumbo, people will know, I've talked with several of your Villanova teammates and stuff about Jumbo's style and his personality. I'd like to hear your impression of him. But that's a phone call he maybe rarely, if ever, other made and tried to get someone back. If someone didn't make it, Jumbo said, all right, you made your decision, but he wouldn't let you get away.
Yeah, I was one of the lucky guys Jumbo came after. When you were gone, you were gone. Good luck. But I was very fortunate that Jumbo had the eye. Jumbo saw something. And I think the fact that he saw something would have been the changing point in me knowing I wanted to be like the guys that were on my wall. Yeah, that was the change point.
All right. You get back in the following year in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
At the start of winter, they put the boards up.
Yeah, I used to hear about the boards all the time. By this time, I was really welcomed back by all my teammates. And it was fantastic. And I remember, who was it? Maybe it was John Harton that said it to me. And I said, I couldn't take all the ball busting. everybody's busting. Everybody's balls. They could take the ball buster. And John Hartnett says, "Why, I tell you what, no. When they're busting your balls, it's a sign they like you." What? It's a sign they like you. So with that, I changed. And I became a good ball buster myself after that. But yeah, things changed, and I got back into really good running training with my mates. When you're living with them, you're eating with them, you're almost sleeping with them, you're going to the library with them, you're going to class with them, you're training with them, you're knowing how great they are. They were the ones who passed on more wisdom than Jumbo. But once you began to believe, hey, I'm part of this group, I'm just like them. And then you look at them and say, hey, shit, I can beat you. Quietly, or Jerry Downwell, I can beat you. Or John Hartnett, I can beat you. You say all these things privately to yourself. And when you're in training, you're visualizing yourself beating the guys. And if you can beat the guys and don't know about it, you can go places from there. So that was always then my goal as I gradually took my time, my first freshman year, my second freshman year, if you like, and right into my sophomore year. I just wanted to learn and observe how these guys handled themselves, because they handled themselves really well.
People that have been in competitive running through university, sometimes we have the thing of pick an event, sometimes an event picks you. And Jumbo, his approach with you, his approach with everybody is, let me think, you just do what I tell you and run, things will work out. And you were not running a lot of miles that first season, right? As much as half.
So when I went back the second time, I was serious. And as I said, I learned from the other guys. So every Tuesday, every Thursday, we did our intervals on the track, and we did our 3/4 mile repeats, and we did our distance run around the various loops, from the Frolic to the tennis courts to the Minga run, up the big hills, up the Radnor loop. I remember all those wonderful loops. We just ran. I adapted to it pretty quick, and I got into a really good rhythm, and it was all through the help of all my teammates.
I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, and maybe I'll cut this out. I don't know if you know the guy. We just had a tragic loss of Don Slusser. He was a guy who ran every Pittsburgh great race, at ninth at New York one year, and a small school All-American. The whole community of Western Pennsylvania is kind of reeling from that. About you've traveled all over the world, but I'm sure one of your key memories is Pittsburgh, where your official 4-minute open mile under 4 minutes. But to you, that wasn't it. You were a 4-minute miler in your mind before that race.
Pretty much. I remember when I was running in my sophomore, junior years, that the target was always going to be to try and get that first sub 4-minute mile. And the closer I got to it, like 4:02 and 4:08. Jumbo used to always say, God damn it, you just do the winning. Let the times come to you. So I learned, even as a teenager with Jerry Farn, learn to win races, learn to win from the front, learn to win from the middle, learn to win from the back. Wherever you are, learn to win races. Times will come. The guys used to say, oh, you must be getting frustrated, Eamonn. You're getting the 4-minute miles. And I just knew, I believed everything in Jumbo. Jumbo was your typical conventional coach, right? He was different. Some guys didn't see eye to eye with Jumbo's style. I did. And it worked for me, and it worked for many great Villanovans. But I believe everything out of Jumbo's mouth. When he said, let the time come, let the time come. Time, in my mind, was when my dad came over in 1975. Would you believe how long ago was that? 50 years ago, coming up now, is it? Yeah. Wow. Wow. When you think about it, I said, I'm going to do it then. I wanted to do it for my dad coming over. On a wet Penn Relays day, I think it was a DMR on the first day. I got the baton, and Larry Rawson from Arizona State, I think it was, went into the lead, and he was flying, and it was torrential rain coming down. But I loved the rain. It was cooling me down. I loved the softness of the track that the rain had created, this nice, soft, spongy feeling. And slowly but surely, I hauled in the Arizona runner, right, Larry Lawson, and passed him on the home straight, and we won the relay. And I ended up running 3:56.2, I think it was, something like that. It was like, wow, I ran the 4-minute mile, but it wasn't official. But I did it for my dad. And the next day in the 4x1 mile relay, we won that as well. And I ran 3:59. So in the space of 24 hours, I just run 2 sub 4-minute miles. That was a huge psychological breakthrough. But it was 1 week later where I went to run in the Pittsburgh Invitational, and I was running in the mile and the 3 mile, and I won the individual mile in exactly the same time, 3:56.2, that I had run the previous week.
Right.
So it turns out my coronation as a sub 4 minute mile was crowned in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, way back in 1975 now. Yeah, wow.
Well, you have a great memory of these things. Let's talk about one in particular. Was not long after that, was that in Jamaica.
That's right.
Let's talk in that detail about that race. You talked about riding down Larry, but that race was, of course, LaCorey by, what do you remember about that race?
Oh, as a result of running the 3:56 mile, I got an invitation via Burt Lancaster, was the promoter down at the Martin Luther King Games on the 17th of May, I think it was, 1975. So Jumbo allowed me to go down to Jamaica to run with LaCorey against Filbert Bailly. And I think there was Byron Dice, if I'm not mistaken, that was in that. I'm not sure if Waldrop was in it or not. I don't think so. All I remember was the sweltering heat in Kingston, Jamaica Stadium. God, I'll never forget it. I went down there with Kenny Shepard and Tiny Kane, my two great training partners at school. Shap was running, I think, in the 800. I can't remember what time he was running in, but I know they were there. Anyhow, it was great support to me, but I just felt so comfortable in myself that I really belonged in there. I wasn't nervous going against LaCorey. I wasn't nervous going against Bailly because I had did I beat LaCorey earlier that year? No, I didn't run really against Marty, just the first time. As it turned out in the race, we all expected Filbert Bailly to do what his trademark is, and that's to go into the lead and run maybe 51 seconds or whatever for the first 400. Filbert, off he went on his merry way. I remember getting into good contention, second place, third place, second place, third place, and Bailly was gone. But with about 500 to go, I decided to start challenging Filbert Bailly, just coming off onto the penultimate home straight off that turn. And I challenged Bailly, and he looked at me and I challenged him again and he started to move off. So I continued to pursue him. Then LaCorey went into second place. I was trying to get by LaCorey again when Bailly came off the last turn to go on and win the race. I'm fighting and battling with LaCorey, and we got into a little bit of an elbow hustle. And Filbert ran 3:51 flat. Marty was 52.2 and I was 53.3 to break the European record, which was held by Olympic champion Michel Yazzie from France, who recently passed away. That race was like an incredible experience. And the most memorable part of that race I'll never forget, beyond what I've just described, is the feeling in my legs with 50 yards to go. They were buckling from underneath me with just fatigue. But I had the determination to try and keep going. But I never experienced that fatigue in my legs like I did that day, because here I am about to run, 3:53, 7 seconds faster than I had run only 2 weeks earlier or so. It was called a dream mile. It was a dream come true for me to be able to break a European record and put myself onto the world platform.
So 50 years ago, what happens when you break a European record? What's the marking of that? And anything happen at that point? Or do they just say, we got it, and put it on the scoreboard?
No, they would have announced it all right. New world record, Filbert Bailly, and second, Marty LaCorey, 3:52.2, and a new European record from Ireland, Villanova, Eamonn Coughlan, 3:53. And it was like disbelief. And that was probably my introduction to the public of Ireland, the non-track and field people, those people who just look at soccer, look at Gaelic football, look at sports, and maybe they wouldn't hear anything about athletics that much at all. But this was now my introduction to the people of Ireland. And from that day on, every race I ran, I was expected to win. I had a bittersweet relationship with winning and disappointing.
If you don't mind, we will talk about the Olympics and what it's like to be X+1 just off the podium. I'd like to talk about the Wanamaker Mile in your first win. By this time, you had won the NCAA Mile Championship outdoors, but it was the Wanamaker Mile that certainly New York fans And the Irish there and everybody associates you with mastering a discipline and a distance and an event.
Yeah,
And it became the news of every games there that
that's
you were
right.
going to show up again for the
Yeah.
Wanamaker.
Yeah, I guess by that stage I had won the 75 indoors, outdoors mile, and then I had won the 76 NC2As indoors and outdoors. The outdoors was 1,500 meters in Philadelphia that year. But indoors was something I really loved from the time you alluded to earlier, when those boards were being put up on the training area for the football team behind the stadium. It was always going to be an exciting time. And I remember the day Jerry Belmont told me, "Hey man, the boards are up now." I remember coming back, I think I was down in the post office or something like that, in Mr. Pyra's car, our assistant coach. I saw the boards were up and I parked the car and got my gear on and I went out to the boards at lunchtime. This was even before we went to do a workout. And I just stepped onto these antiquated, broken down boards where they were loose, where one of the boards could easily go from underneath you because it hadn't yet been properly installed or repaired. But it was definitely a health and safety issue for us runners, even when they were repaired. Even when they were repaired. I remember stepping onto the boards that day on my own and jogging around them. And I loved the relationship my legs, my body almost had with the wood and the spring. I just loved it. So from the time I formally stepped on it to train with the guys, and for the next 4 years in Villanova, running on these boards, I just loved the feel. We do our 1-lappers, our 2-lappers, our 3-lappers, our ladders and the boards. And I just felt like a Ferrari racing car going around the turns. I was never afraid to lean and pull myself around them. I just loved it. So as a result of my successes on the boards and now out of college and beating Marty Quarry and a few others, I think Kulak beat John Walker or was it Rod Dixon in Toronto. The Wanamaker Mile was something that I only had witnessed when Tony Waldrop ran the first ever sub-4 minute mile in the Wanamaker Mile. It was something I wanted to do. My understanding was that Jumbo wouldn't let me go in the Wanamaker Mile when I was a senior. He wanted to save me for when I was finished school. But Howard Schmertz, the race director, always wanted Eamonn Coughlan into the mile. No, Jumbo didn't want me in. So I came back in 1976 when I graduated from Villanova for the 77 Wanamaker Mile. Again, this was something special to me. Madison Square Gardens, running in the Wanamaker Mile. I had witnessed and read about Ronnie Delaney winning it 4 times. I had witnessed Irish teams with Noel Carroll breaking the world 4x880 world record in there. And now here am I going to run the Wanamaker Mile. So that was one of the special memories I had winning my first ever Wanamaker Mile. Just don't ask me who was in it.
Yeah. A little bit on the personal side, talking about races that were most important to you, certainly the 4-minute Masters barrier, breaking the 4-minute mile barrier a couple times, and certainly as a Masters, and how you planned it and the visit your dad came for. You brought your dad over in a pursuit of some records.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've had many special moments, and it's always very difficult to say, well, what order do you put them in? It's just impossible. I would have to say the World Championships 5,083. I broke the world indoor record for the mile in San Diego in 1979. And what was it, 3:52.6 or something like that? But I wanted to run the first ever sub-4 minute mile. John Walker had done it outdoors. My coach always said to me, Eamonn, if you could do this indoors, that would be one of the most iconic moments and milestones in indoor miling. So I was disappointed, even though I broke the world record. But 81, I came back and I ran 3:50.6, broke the world record. And I was disappointed, really disappointed. 1982, I was injured. I had an Achilles injury. I thought I was going to be out of action forever. It was like a mission to Lourdes, when eventually after 9 months on a crutch in a cast, I went over to West Germany, thanks to Thomas Wessinghagen, my great mate and fellow competitor. And I went to a specialist over there and they did radiation therapy on my Achilles because every morning getting out of bed with like a cancer, couldn't walk. It was awful, 9 months. However, in Germany, they cured me. On Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I had 3 different treatments. And by Saturday, I was back running an hour. It was just a miracle. And that's why I say it was like going to Lourdes. So
Yeah.
when I came back, I swore to myself, once I got rid of that injury, I'm not going to do my 100 miles a week anymore. I'm going to average 80 miles a week. And now it's average 80 miles a week. So I could be 75 or I could be 85, but I'm not going to go near the 90s plus at all. And after, 4 months of really silent training, I felt healthy for the first time in my life and I was ready. So when it came to the races and you're trying to do a deal, some of the meat promoters, that's when you're trying to do deals, say, it's Eamonn, you're not worth that. You never come back after a year. And what do you mean I'll never come back after a year? I'll be back. Anyhow, we worked on deals based on performances. And it worked out good in the end. But when it came then to trying to get that sub 350 mile in 1983 on a track I helped design in the Meadowlands in New Jersey, the previous year when I was injured, I knew there was a flaw in the track and I pointed it out. Athletes were falling on this arc, which had a mini straightaway in it. So they decided to repair that and get it ready if they wanted the fastest track in the world. So the following year, the issue was solved and it was time for me to go to bat. I had been running really well. I was really healthy. So I rang my dad and said, I'm in good shape. I want you to come over. I have a ticket arranged for you. Pick it up in Dublin and get your ass over here. And we were going to go to Wanamaker Mile. I was taking him to Toronto and I was taking him to Dallas, where I was going to run. And then I was going to take him to the Meadowlands, where I was going to go for the 4-minute mile. Sadly, when he came over, he saw me win the Wanamaker Mile. I think it was the 5th Wanamaker Mile or thereabouts, but he passed away in his sleep 2 nights after the Millrose Games. And he was like, that's it. Jesus, Mary and Joseph. So I brought my dad's body home and didn't compete in those 2 other places, Toronto nor Dallas. And when I came back to New York, my mom said, you don't be upset now over your dad and don't be blaming yourself. You do what he wanted you to do. I remember going back, went down to the track to test it the day before the meet. And on my way home, we were struck with the blizzard of 83.
Yeah.
And all hell broke loose on the highways in New York City. It took me, what normally would take me 40 minutes to get home, took me 6 hours in horrendous blizzard conditions. So the track meet was canceled. That's it. It was gone. And Ray Lump from the New York Athletic Club, my great friend, and Jimmy Rafferty spoke to Olin Castle, who was the head of USA Track and Field, or TAC as it was known then. And they said to Olin, we want Eamonn to run in the Meadowlands 2 days after the USA Championships in Madison Square Garden. And he goes, no fucking way. No way. I want Eamonn in the Garden for the national championships. So he said, Eamonn is agreeing to run in the championships if you agree that we'll put the track meet on after the USA Championships. Because USA was always the last meet of the season. So Olin agreed. So I duly went to Madison Square Garden on the Friday night and won in 3:57, maybe something like that, taking it easy. So I knew I was ready. So on the Sunday, I decided not to stay at home for the weekend, go into a hotel, get away from Yvonne and her aunts who are visiting from Ireland, not to be a distraction. And I quietly just chilled out for the weekend in Newark, near the Meadowlands Arena, the Brendan Byrne Arena. And I remember then being really ready that morning, just so focused on it. I just knew I had it in me. I remember then writing down my splits in my diary. 58, 155, 156, 253, 254, 54 in last quarter, 349. And I wrote 349 into my shoe. And with that, the phone rang. And it was Ray Flynn, who said, Eamonn, what time are you going to the track meet at? And I go, sorry, Ray. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to wake you up, he said. Oh, he wasn't waking me up. I was well awake. Yeah. I was looking at what I wanted to do. As it turned out, Ray and I made our way over from the hotel to the track meet. When I got there and I tested the track, I got away from the arena then, went into my own little world and came back when it was time to go live to the Meadowlands in New Jersey. I think it was the LA Lakers and Boston Celtics were playing, and at halftime, straight to the Meadowlands for the mile. And I clearly remember almost every step of that race, what was about to unfold in front of me.
Who was in the race and what was your strategy for that race? So now you're running for time, not just to win.
Yeah, I was confident enough without being cocky enough that I could beat everybody. I'd beaten Steve Scott, I'd beaten Vessing Aga, I'd beaten Jose Luis Abascal, I'd beaten them all. And I decided I would get my great mate and Villanova teammate, Ross Donahue from the New York Athletic Club, to be my rabbit. So the deal with Ross was to take me through the 880 mark in the race. And let's go through in about 155, 156. I remember coming clearly to the start line. And as we're called to our marks, and as the gun is fired, within the first, I'd say 20 yards of that race coming into the turn, I had to make an instant decision. And that instant decision was to go right with Ross Donahue, or if I didn't, Jose Abascal from Spain would go in front of me. And I didn't want them blocking me. And I didn't want them taking a 10th or 2 tenths or 3 tenths or 4 tenths of a second away from me. I knew I had to stay on pace with Ross behind him. And Ross did a great job. And that
155.
he did a great job. And he went on a little bit more. Then I'm now out on my own. And I think I might have had probably, 3.5 laps to go on my own, more than 440 yards out. And I just remember thinking, if Scott wants to break the world record here, he can, but he's going to finish second. I remember thinking that to myself, I'm not going to beat me here now. It was almost like it was a spirit coming down where it made me feel like I was running on a cushion of air. I just felt like I was flowing freely and lightly and didn't even think about what was going on behind me. And then when I heard the crowd cheering, I thought maybe Steve Scott was coming onto me. And I just remember one lap to go and remember the way you went around those bores in Villanova, long your way around the turns, just go freeze a bird. And when I went over the finish line and I put my hands up, I knew, even though the time wasn't official. And I remember doing a little lap of honor. And the people from ESPN who were showing it saying, it's unofficial, it's unofficial. And I go, no, I did it. Because I just knew. And then to my surprise, it was Ray Flynn who came over to me and gave me a big hug, congratulating me. And it was Ray who was coming on to me, not Steve Scott. But it was just one of those, again, special days in amongst many special races that I'll also treasure when I achieved that. And the bittersweet part is my poor dad wasn't able to be there to witness it, but he was there in spirit.
Yeah, you can feel really good about that, I'm sure. This is great talking to you, and your memories of these races are just fantastic. Everybody's going to really enjoy hearing these again. Let's go on to some of the darker side of stuff. Well, money, not so much dark, but you had to negotiate the world at a time when professionalism was changing. The first try of the world professional track circuit didn't appeal to you. You left, came back. But you did negotiate a good way to make it a financial career as a professional runner. And you mixed it with work with the Irish administration of sports. Very interesting story. If people don't know it, it's fascinating that you navigated your way all through that, working and performance money. The world was changing there with money. How did that all work out with you in terms of the timing? What I'm thinking of is, it seems to me that was the right time to be at your age and to be greatly competitive. Opportunities came, and how hard was it to solve that?
It wasn't hard at all because your performance was dictating your value, number one. But even today, some people would say to me, oh God, hey, you're in the wrong era. Look at all these guys now, Inga Britson, Josh Kerr, all the great Kenyans, all the money that's out there, the Diamond League. When I look back, people would have said to Ronnie Delaney, oh, Ronnie, look what Eamon's doing here. God, you missed out on your career. Yet Ronnie Delaney was doing pretty good in the 50s. And before that, Pavel Nurmi was doing pretty good as well. So I had to learn big time. And I had to learn because I had some good mates in Villanova as well. Marty LaCorey, who was probably the greatest marketeer of himself than anybody that went out through Villanova in that era. It's different nowadays with the social media and the value of the number of people you might have on your TikTok or your whatever, and the way of your ability to be an influencer. But Ron Stanko was another great mate of mine who would have been Marty's shadow, as we called him, the shadow. And Ron was fantastic. He was a lawyer and he was Marty's somewhat agent and advisor and business partner. And Ron would have helped me as a young kid come through, and I would have wheeled and dealed and made Ron cry when it came to deals myself over the years, which he'll know very well about. But money only became something I thought about I guess, my junior year, when all of a sudden the shoe companies were interested in me, and you get your free shoes, and we'd be all delighted walking through campus with a big box of shoes, big container of shoes. Ooh, it was a cool time when you got shoes. But I began to think more about it through my great friend Kenny Shepard. He was at the 1975 NCAAs in Provo, Utah. And Shaq really guided me along because Art Simberg from Puma rep over there. And I can't remember off the top of my head, the Adidas rep, they were both interested in having me wear their shoes. Shaq, anyhow, negotiated with Art Simberg to take me down to a really nice leather store in Provo. And he'd buy me a really nice leather jacket. So I proudly got this beautiful leather jacket, soft leather jacket. I'll never forget it. Really sexy it was. But anyhow, I duly ran the NC2As, but it was the following year where Puma felt they owned me. I had no contract with them because I was still only in college. There was no nils back then. And when I now had achieved what I had achieved and headed off to Montreal as a bit of a dark horse, Puma really wanted me to wear their shoes because Adidas were having me. So I negotiated a deal with Puma where they put a few dollars into my shoes and said, great, go ahead and do it. There was no contract. There was first, second, and third prize, but there wasn't a fourth prize. And sadly, I finished fourth. But as times went by then over the next couple of years, you'd be getting you free shoes and a couple of dollars here until it was time to get really serious. And the getting really serious was to get a really good shoe contract, which I did get eventually with Adidas, and I held that for quite a number of years. And it also got time to be serious with the race promoters. I'll never forget in 1976, when I was coming home for Christmas, Jack Pirate in Villanova told me that Bob Comstock down in Maryland wanted me to run in the mile against, I think it was Marty. And I said to Mr. Pirate, but Mr. Pirate, I'm going home for Christmas and my ticket is not going to allow me to come back in time for the track meet. Oh, we got to change your ticket. We got to change your ticket. And I go, yeah, I need $1,000 to change my ticket. Right. So Mr. Pirate duly got me $1,000, which was to run in the race. And I didn't have to change my ticket at all.
That's all right.
I did a pretty good deal. But we negotiated ourselves all the way through until 1982, 1983. IMG came on the scene. 1982, 1983, IAAF, World Athletics, back then allowed us to now take a fee for running, allowed us to do shoe contracts, but it went into what was called a trust fund. And in the trust fund, you couldn't use the money unless it was helping to pay your expenses. And you could only withdraw the trust fund when you were retired. It was a made-up piece of bullshit, transitioning from amateurism to professionalism. And the likes of Johnny Walker and myself and Ray and all the boys, we would have been probably, I suppose you could say, the forerunners to all of the professional side of track and field when there was no agents involved in it at all.
Where did you put your trust fund? Was it out in Colorado, the one bank that kind of had all the American?
No, I didn't have one.
Oh, wow.
Well, I did. I actually did. It had to be set up with your national federation. And in Ireland, it was the BLE. So the BLE set up the trust fund, and they were the ones who wanted to take 10% of the earnings that you were getting at the time. Unlike nowadays, the country pays you to run if you make the criteria for funding.
Oh, we talked about these transitions when you psychologically said, okay, I'm an elite runner now. I've run the times. I've won the races. You were introduced to the Irish public through the race performance in Jamaica and the European record. But your first big international event, it was like a last second entry to the European Championships in Rome.
Yeah, that was 1974. And John Hartnett was our great Villanova and the Irish record holder for the mile. He had just run 3:54 on grass, I think, the previous year. So in that summer, I was making my breakthrough in 1974 when I think I won the IC4A's 800 meters, which was a big deal for me. And I went on to run the pen relays and win some stuff at Villanova. And I was getting closer and closer to John. So when I finished behind him, I think it was in the Cork City Sports, John obviously qualified to run the 1,500 meters. And I was just maybe 0.3 of a second. I ran 3:43 or something like that, which was the qualifying time. And I just missed out on it. So fortunately, the Irish Federation had an opportunity that they could send somebody in a race that might have had a B standard. So I would have qualified as a B standard athlete for the 5,000 meters in Rome. And also I went to Rome to run. And Rome was certainly an eye opener. Just to be in the hotel with all the great athletes from Russia, all over Europe. Lasse Wehrlein, Brendan Foster, Ian Stewart, all the greats were there. And here was I, only a little kiddie, whatever, 19 was I at the time, and now running in the European 5,000 meter championships. But anyhow, I got blown away. I didn't get out of the heats, but I certainly left there knowing that I wanted to be part of this elite world class level of runners. And I'll never forget going back to Villanova in September. And I had a lovely mirror in my room. And I had my own room for the first time. I had a single room. I qualified for a single room in Austin Hall. Anyhow, I wrote on the back of my mirror, my goal, on the back of the mirror, my goal for the mile that year, which we've already talking about it when I ran 3:53.3 in Jamaica. But I put 3:54.5 as my goal when I left Rome, got to Villanova, and said, that's it. And I never looked at it again, would you believe, that mirror, the back of that mirror, because I knew what was on it. But at the same time, when I did 3:53.3, I said, what actually number did I put down on that? And I couldn't wait to get back to Villanova to have a look. Oh, shit, I ran faster.
That's fantastic. Let's just visit quickly the Olympic experiences. Certainly a disappointment. It can be soul crushing to just miss the podium. And I don't know, certainly in 76, perhaps drugs were under the radar. But so I wanted to talk about your observances and your commenting. And of course, you've talked about considering using drugs for later in life for the 88 games. But what was going on? Was there in the 70s something that drugs were a part of the sport up through middle distance or elsewhere that was something you guys talked about?
Honestly, I never saw them around. I never saw them in Villanova. I never saw them in the various training camps that I was involved in. And I think back in the 70s, mid 70s, it was more kind of rumor and innuendo that you'd hear about various countries or athletes or whatever. And that's all it was, rumor, innuendo, and conversation. But it was never any more of that. So it never entered my mind, whatsoever. But yet I wasn't naive to believe it wasn't going on, but it never entered my mind. Then if you fast forward after all I achieved, and when you fast forward to 1988, when having finished fourth twice, I mean, pissed off about that. What does it take? What does it take? What does it take? And I did question it, and I did talk to people about it, and yet it was always low down. So I never went down that road. But I will admit, I did get a prescription, right? And I never forget looking at it when I came away and fucking carrying it up and throwing it in the fucking bin because I couldn't bring myself to fucking doing this at this stage of my life. Why would I do that after all I achieved? So we know what happened after that. I didn't perform in the 1988 Olympics at 35 years of age. I think I got into the semifinal, but no, drugs wasn't something that was always talked about. One of my great friends, Lord of Mercy, he passed away, Tony Bryans. He was a great athlete here in Ireland, and he studied out in Kansas. I think it was in Kansas. And Tony, anyhow, was doing his master's in physiology, sports physiology. And he did huge research into performance-enhancing drugs, and he did huge research into blood doping at the time. I remember when I read his thesis and meeting his friend, who was a doctor here in Ireland, and showing him this and asking him about blood doping. And he turns around and he says, do you want to fucking kill yourself? So
really,
it was never worth it. It was never worth doing it. It was never worth doing it.
Okay, the Olympics, finishing fourth, spectacular race. And then people don't know, I'm 0.3 of a second is the difference between being on the official record book but certainly forefront in your mind, it's a life-changing thing to win an Olympic medal or to finish fourth. And you've gone through that twice. When you coach your own children or other people and you talk about competition and not quite meeting goals, what's your thoughts on that for other people? And your advice?
Not sure what way to come back with that. What are we talking about? Finishing fourth and being disappointed with it? sure you're disappointed. It's like the difference between Rory McIlroy winning the Masters yesterday and becoming an immortal or not immortal. So you could win every single race in the whole world. And if you don't win an Olympic medal, it only is now. It used to be gold. You don't become an immortal. However, there's lots of great champions who haven't won Olympic medals, and there's lots of great champions who have finished fourth place, and there's lots of gold medalists who cheated, and there's lots of gold medalists who had ill health, and there's lots of gold medalists who probably haven't had the wonderful life that I've been fortunate to have with my friends from college, my friends from high school, my friends in my golf, my friends in my motorbike world, my friends in my business life. I've had nothing but great life out of my sport of athletics. So had I won an Olympic gold medal, would that have changed me or changed life for me? It might have for the worst, but it didn't. But it didn't. So like Rory McIlroy saying the other day to his little 4-year-old daughter, Poppy, never give up. Follow your dreams. Believe. Never give up, and it'll come good. But if it doesn't come good, I think one can always be proud of the fact that you did try to the very, 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 very end until you no longer can do it. But I'm a happy camper right now.
And the list of accomplishments, world championships, national records, world records, age group, the list is so long that it's an amazing, successful career. Congratulations on all you've done and your good attitude. And you've talked about the struggles and adjusting to moving to Villanova, how tough that was, and admitting defeat and coming back and never giving up. It's an amazing story. I just wanted to talk about some of the relationships. You've mentioned so many of your colleagues affectionately and their impact on you and your coach. And Jumbo. Jumbo's famous for when you graduated, it's okay, go get on with your life now. Did you have contact with Villanova, Jumbo, and your coach back in Ireland after you left school?
After I left school, Jumbo didn't coach me. After I left school, yeah, I did communicate with Jumbo during the times I went to Villanova to train with my teammates who were back training there as well, Shap and Tiny and the boys. And I just knew that you move on. You move on. When you graduate from junior high or you graduate from high school and you graduate from college, you move on. When you graduate from being part of the great Villanova track team, you move on, and Jumbo moves on. But I think that was mature. Jumbo didn't want to be hugging onto the guys. At the same time, he was there for advice. But at that stage, I was back being coached by my club coach, Jerry Farnan, because Jumbo, when I left Ireland to go to Villanova, Jerry Farnan didn't want to interfere. With Jumbo now, you do what it is with Jumbo. He said, if I start sending you workouts while you're at Villanova, it's going to screw up your mind. It's going to screw up everything. So from that point in 1976, after I graduated, Jerry Farnan, after the Olympics in 76, became my coach again. And the night of the 1976 Olympics, July 31st, 1976, when I finished fourth, I left the stadium and I met Jerry Farnan. The night before, he had said to me, what are you going to do tomorrow? And I said, I'm going to stay behind John Walker all the way. And I'm going to kick off the final turn. But I didn't. I fucking went into the lead after 400 meters and screwed the whole thing up. But after the race, he was devastated. I was devastated. And we went off into the city of Montreal and we took a subway somewhere and we get out in the middle and we came up into the street and we decided we'd go into a bar and we'd have a beer in a quiet corner somewhere. We walked into the bar and all of a sudden from a distance, I heard, Coughlan, what the fuck happened to you today? I was $100 on. Jerry Farnan grabbed me and he pulled me outside. He says, let's get the hell out of there. And that night he said to me, let's get ready for the 1980 Olympics. We'll train the mile, we'll race the mile, we'll train the 5,000. So from that time on, he took over. But it didn't work. I finished fourth again.
Yeah, it didn't work for the podium, but it worked pretty well. Still an amazing accomplishment. What do you think about drugs now? I think there's been some articles and some discussion on it. It's a big deal in sports now, and certainly in distance running. Just every time a record is broken, if it's a stunner, the questions come up. So what's the state of sport to you? What's your opinion? And do you have any concerns or cares about that? I know you've had to address it in your official capacity before.
To be honest with you, I don't think about it at all anymore. I would like to think in athletics, in my sport, that it is a lot cleaner now than it probably has been in the 80s, 90s, and noughties. But at the same time, I'm not naive to believe it's not going on. Because as long as there's science out there and as long as these major drug companies are producing drugs for people who will really need them going forward, and maybe there's a side effect that can help athletes, that's always going to happen. But I don't think about it at all, to be honest with you. I like to try and look at the trustworthiness of the athletes who are performing out there, and I don't really get caught up in it at all. But I wouldn't be, as I say, naive to believe there's not performance-enhancing drug. And when I see the likes of the young Inga Britzen running what he ran this past year, since he was 17 years of age, do I question whether he's using drugs and that? To be honest with you, I don't, because I like to look at the guy as a really nice, clean, perhaps the best middle distance runner the world has ever seen. But I'd like to know, besides the drugs, the new shoes that are out there compared to the ones that are behind you. Those Nikes, a lot different. Track and field performance enhancement has been improved through modern science in terms of training techniques, modern science in terms of diet, modern science in terms about your lactate levels. Athletes are more in tune with what's going on in their bodies and more in tune with their recovery. And with the new shoes that's out there, which is fantastic, I actually have fantastic belief in them because it's like golf, all the modern technology in golf gloves. So why not have technology in our running shoes? Because you still have to put one foot in front of the other and you still got to run damn fast. It's a lot different now than it was way back then. And I like to think that it's in good shape, really good shape.
Nice. You're always welcome back in some of the famous places you run, and you've been visited. You still travel to some of these. What's your favorite ones? What do you look forward going back to as just a visiting VIP to be honored back to watch races?
As a visiting VIP, thank you very much. I look forward very much so in 2 weeks' time to being over at the Penn Relays.
Oh, you're going? Okay. How often do you get to the Penn Relays usually?
I think it's about 3 or 4 years since I was last there. But my Villanova teammates come to Ireland. We have reunions in Ireland. We have reunions at Penn. We'd have meetings, different places. I think they were in Hawaii last September. I couldn't make that because my son John was getting married. But I love going back to the Penn Relays now, really do. And I've been very honored and privileged and humbled by the fact that since I last ran in the Wanamaker Millrose Games in New York, which was 1994, when I was chasing down the Masters mile record, I and my wife have been invited back to New York every year. And it's paid for too, flights and hotel. And I appreciate all those people in the Armory Foundation in New York, Rita and Jonathan, for their kindness of bringing me there. And they said, Eamonn, as long as you're around, you're going to be part of the Millrose Games. I love that. I love going to the World Championships, which I've been attending for the last 3 or 4 editions of it. And even in Paris this last year, it's a lovely reunion when you go to the various track meets around the world. Even when I recall as a child, what I said about hearing about and seeing Roger Bannister run the first ever sub 4 minute mile as a kiddie on the Path News, to be invited back or over when I ran the first ever Masters sub 4 minute miles 40 years after Bannister to Oxford for that celebration. And then to be invited back this year for the 70th anniversary of Sir Roger Bannister's first sub 4 minute mile. I got to pinch myself and say how fortunate I have been to what I achieved and to be still acknowledged all these years on. It's pretty nice and humbling.
Yeah, well, everybody who gets a chance to say hi to you and ask for your autograph and shake your hand, it's a highlight for them too. I'm sure you realize. It's been great spending time with you. I don't know if there's anybody we could talk for hours. I think this is I appreciate your time and your reflections, and it's great to talk with you and see your attitude on this thing and your perspective and how things are going well for you now.
Thanks very much, Matt. Honored to be here with you, and I want to be a big shout out here to have my cup with water in it and Villanova and none other than the great Des McCormick.
Oh my gosh, that's brilliant.
The man who inspired me all my life and helped me to get to Villanova University. So thank you too.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed another episode. Do you have someone you'd like to hear interviewed on the podcast? You can leave a comment on the YouTube channel or on the website, running70s.com. That's running70s.com. Let me know what you think of the episodes and anyone, including yourself, you'd like to hear interviewed. I hope you enjoyed another episode of Running in the 70s. Voices, stories, and memories of athletes who were running in the 70s. Until next time, wherever you are, keep looking forward and don't forget to look back.